I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, February the 28th, and finally this cattle inventory report is due to come out on Thursday, over a month late due to the government shutdown. Most everybody expecting the cattle inventory to be larger again on this report. Remember, these are estimates, expecting the calf crop to be larger, which would be magic due to the fact that we have fewer cows, beef cows especially. Remember, the heifer slaughter in 2018 was up 6.5%. Beef cow slaughter was up 8.6% compared to the previous year, and compared to the average of the three previous years was up more than 20% last year. So remember, those are estimates, and they're probably going to be larger. I think it would be a big shock and kind of a boost for the markets if they did come out to be just steady, or maybe even less, like what a lot of us think that they probably should be. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's look at the board on Wednesday. Your February live cattle futures down 17 at 129.40. April steady at 129.92. March feeder cattle up 42 cents at 143.87. Your April was up 45 cents at 147.22. Pretty good support on your feeder board. Now you look, it hadn't been that long ago, I was talking about how undervalued some of these late summer and fall contracts were. Well, now your August, September, and October are all over 152 and rising. And just like I say, we're going to be running out of these lightweight calves, these stalker calves, thinner type, grazing type cattle right here as we start to approach what should be spring, but we haven't seen very many signs of it yet. Just like those cattle are going to be very short, going to be also very short of those hard yearling cattle late in the summer and into the fall. But look at your fat cattle trade, which has really been non-existent. We had one little deal in Iowa reported on mandatory price reporting on Wednesday at 128, which would be higher. But I tell you what, these cattle feeders are ready to get paid now. They're thinking, show me the money. And they're kind of maybe trying to get together a little bit. You know, we talked about that uncle movement there, the unified negotiated cattlemen's leverage effort, and it looks like maybe they are trying this week to get together. We haven't seen a lot of guys sloughing cattle away because they know that it's time to get paid. We've had two failures in negotiated trade in the last 3 weeks, because the packers know that with all these lighter weights, this bad performance in the feedlots and what have you, knowing that what time of the year it is, it's time to get a spike in this fat cattle market. They are just really brustled up and pushing against it as much as they can. And I'm not sure that they're not going to bull up and refuse to give any market position this week. They're already kind of showing it in the sales. Sioux Falls, we talked about Stockman's West, their Tuesday fat cattle auction there. It wasn't as much higher as you thought it probably should be. Well, let's look at your Wednesday fat cattle auction at Sioux Falls Regional Livestock Market there in Worthing, South Dakota. It's actually steady to $2 lower on a good run there. Most of the good fat cattle and steers and heifers brought 125.5 to 127.25, but that was slightly lower than what they had last week. Justin Lumpkin noted that the packers were not very aggressive, were not wanting to participate in there, and we know that they need cattle. But then also to boot, your farmer feeders that like to come in there and get those near beer two-weight cattle and take them back home and feed them some more. With another round of storms coming, they just kind of threw their hands up, and then they weren't real aggressive either. But it might be tough again. And I tell you what, you talk about tough. These packers are tough, and they know darn well that they don't have to buy those cattle. I've talked to you, about it before. We mentioned it last week. The only way you ever gain $1 or even hold the market steady is just your your Packers being nice, and giving guys a little bit of a break, because they do not have to do it. You get to the end of this week, and they'll start pulling contracts for March. And then they may just decide to try to hold this thing off as long as they can and drag it out, well into March, and thinking that, they're not going to give the Packers any boost at all. But I tell you what, guys, you just got to stick together. And anybody that's got any help to them at all, that's turning numbers in, don't give them the cattle, sell them negotiated, call consolidated beef producers, call another cooperative, there's several around in the 5-area feeding region, sell them yourself, negotiated, do something. Let's try to hold this thing together a little bit. Let's talk about the slaughter. We're back on pace here exactly with last week, or with last year. We had that shutdown at the tail end of the week before last, and then the early part of last week. That had to do some fixing on some plants, especially at Fort Morgan and Cargill there. And but now right back to full steam ahead. 351,000 through Wednesday, 29,000 more than the same time a week ago, but exactly the same as a year ago. And as long as we can keep pace with a year ago, we're doing an awful good job, because we were up 2.5% compared to the previous year, last year. But let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the day on Wednesday sitting at 140.01, down 53 cents, and really thought it might be a little bit better than that. But these feeder cattle buyers, they want this fat cattle market to show them a little bit. They realize what's going on. They want it to show a little bit, and I tell you what, we just cannot overstate how the storms are affecting things. And it is going to get bitter, bitter, bitter cold. Nearly as cold as that polar vortex sweep that come through here a few weeks ago. Going to get nearly that cold again. Is going to sweep down and get bitter cold in most of Kansas too. Your Texas Panhandle region is really the only ones that have come out unscathed on this deal. And it's even going to get cold down here in the Texas Panhandle this time. But not expecting much of any moisture at all, because we don't get moisture down here in this country. But it is going to get cold. Guys are just have given up. They're tired of it. They can't fight it anymore. And you're starting to see it. The guys just they don't have much fight left in them. A lot of them have already thrown in the towel and crawled in the bottle. And may not come out until April. But the ones that haven't yet, I give them the utmost respect. The guys that are getting out, pulling those coveralls one more time, and then fighting it, trying to get things started, get going, get stuff fed. Extremely short of hay in many areas. They've had some hay auctions around. Just a regular old fescue round bale in Missouri will bring $100 now, where normally $20, $25, $30 to buy all you want. And it is just crazy out there. This winter has been so rough. But let's look at some of your feeder cattle auctions on Wednesday. Oklahoma, OKC West in El Reno, Oklahoma, they were still selling and doing this normal time fairly late in the evening. They're still selling. Gonna have a big run there. Sure, 10, 12,000 head, counting the good run of calves that they had on Tuesday there. But I pulled up this Cattle Market Central market report. Pull it anytime you want to, during the sale, in the morning, and see what's been going on. I pulled it here fairly late in the day, and you look, they sold well over 8,000 cattle there, and this is just for Wednesday's sale there, so you don't see many calves reported, of course. But you look at some of the changes there, and you can see that the trend on the best represented weights of feeder cattle sure looks steady to $2 lower, and I'd say that would sure knock it in the head. I talked to John Cooper there and the auctioneer, and I asked him kind of how things were going. He said it's cheaper, and it's just taking a little while to get them sold. But still, you look at some of those represented weights, and not too bad of a sale there at El Reno, but they had some nicer weather early in the week, and those fair weather farmers there in North Texas and and southeast Oklahoma. They finally got some cattle rounded up and got them moved in there, because they've been kind of behind on marketing their cattle because of the bad weather in that area too. Torrington livestock markets, 3,900 head on Wednesday in Torrington. The market reporter called it very uneven. A few real specific weights were sharply lower than a week ago, and it's again because of this storm. You know, every sale barn, especially a big barn like that, has certain buyers in there that kind of fill a slot. And when one of those guys just decided that they've had enough, then you just see that a hole in there somewhere, and then it takes some of you guys that's got a little trade in them to come in and fill that hole up, but it's going to be at a lower level, of course. But then you just think that the sun always shines in Bassett, Nebraska. 6,000 head for their sale, and just another humdinger. I tell you what, those guys just never have a bad day there, and the farmer feeders around there are aggressive, and they support that market. They like those really good cattle that they have in there. And of course, you got people from other parts outside the region that they're sending orders in there wanting really good cattle. One thing I did notice on Bassett, they had several more heifers than they did steers, and I can't help but think that a lot of these guys sold steers early and probably part of their heifers, thinking that they were going to keep some more of those heifers back, and they're tired of fighting it too. You know, they think, gosh, I forgot how hard it is when you have a bad winter. You know, I've got enough cows. I don't need to keep any more of these things back, and I am going to get rid of them and take a little bit of the pressure off of myself. But look at this market report on Cattle Market Central that I pulled up there. Look at these represented weights and the averages on them. On your steers, nearly 1,000 head of 6-weight steers average 646 at 167.55. That's the average on all the 6-weight steers they had at Bassett on Wednesday. That's higher than the prettiest, fanciest single one or load lot could bring almost anywhere else. 1,045 head of steers in the 7-weight category average 746 at 152.55. On the heifers, like I said, look how many heifers there are. Over 1,000 head of 5-weight heifer calves average 559 at 160.57. That's the girls now. And then nearly 1,300 head of 6-weight heifers average 647 at 147.57. I have to give you a couple of quotes out of there. And we've got 73 head of 780-pound steers bring 160. Now those were a deal. Those were value-added cattle there, drug-free and maybe all natural. But that was a niche deal on those. But I'd rather talk about a bigger slug. 214 head of steers weighed 726 at 156. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.